Theatres have a timeless allure, not just for the living, but also those who have spiritually moved on. This theatre ghost was determined not to miss a final curtain call over a century ago and has since stuck around. The Princess Theatre in Melbourne, Australia still reserves a seat for their literal Phantom of the Opera at every opening night performance, while Frederick Federici's appearance is thought to mark the start of a successful season. The British baritone opera singer named Anatole Frederick Demidov Baker was born in Florence, Italy in 1850. Having achieved great success in London and New York, he was signed up by an Australian theatre company called J.C. Williamson and visited the then outpost country in the mid-1880s to perform operas and operettas for local audiences. On a Saturday evening in 1888, Signor Federici, as he was known, was performing to a packed house of onlookers who had come to see and hear a new production of the most popular opera of the time, French composer Charles Gounod's Faust. In the final act of the performance, the desperate heroine Marguerite suffers in a prison cell while the devil, Mephistopheles, played by Federici, claims Faust's guilt-ridden soul and drags him downwards into a fiery hell. At the climax of the scene, Federici threw his scarlet cloak around the Faust character while orange and red steam began to rise around their feet, and then the trapdoor on which they both stood slowly descended, conveying the two singers beneath the stage. However, on this particular evening, in the cellar beneath, only the tenor playing Faust stepped off and headed upstairs to take his bows. Signor Federici had seemed to hesitate, then plunged forward into the arms of the steam machine operator, taken suddenly and in an instant, at the age of 37, by a fatal heart attack. The celebrated basso was carried upstairs and his unconscious figure laid on a settee in the green room, while someone rushed away for a doctor, and others, including his distraught wife, either tried to provide care or stared in disbelief. On arrival, the doctor attempted to restart his heart using galvanic batteries, but without success. It wasn't until after the other cast members had left the stage that they learnt about the well-loved Fred's demise. Eerily, everyone at the show, including the cast, swore he had actually been there on stage for the curtain call, taking his bows alongside all the other performers. On the Monday night, the Princess Theatre remained closed as a mark of respect, but the Faust season recommenced the day after that, with a substitute singer called Ernest Sinclair taking the role of Mephistopheles. It was at the end of that performance that Federici, despite having been buried the day before, continued the tenacity, heralding his near century of persistent hauntings. That night, it seemed that Federici himself had again joined the rest of the cast in assembling on stage, and with them taking his bows and curtain calls. Some of the other performers swore that his ghost was standing there with them, that two Mephistopheles, in identical red costumes, had stepped forward to immerse themselves in the audience's applause. While Federici's substitute, Ernest Sinclair, was not among the cast members who witnessed his ghostly double that night, he did later complain that invisible hands kept shoving him back into the line of performers every time he stepped up to the footlights. While some might have dismissed his claims as overwrought emotion or the desire for publicity, it was not long before his experience became one of many. Cast members claimed that Federici was taking the curtain call on many subsequent nights of the season, and he also became frequently seen in the theatre's auditorium. His usual spot was the centre of the third or second row of the dress circle, from where he appeared to be critiquing the performance of his fellow actors, before then gliding away down the stairs behind the royal box. On these occasions, he was usually outfitted in elegant evening dress. A particularly reliable witness was the theatre entrepreneur George Musgrove, who was a partner of J.C. Williamson Limited. he spotted an unknown man in evening attire sitting in the front row of an otherwise empty dress circle during a late-night rehearsal. Musgrove told off a member of staff for allowing a visitor into the theatre. The employee insisted that he had admitted no one, and when a search was done, the stranger had vanished. Many others claimed to see Federici's apparition, and even more said that they had felt the ghost brush past them in the theatre's narrow corridors. Any mishap or incident of equipment failure was also blamed on Federici. Rumours of the spectre spread, and the theatre owners decided to capitalise on the phenomenon, offering a payment of £100 to any member of the public who would spend the night alone in the theatre. Apparently, no one took them up on the offer, but frightening encounters continued to be reported. In around 1900, a new fire alarm system was installed in the Princess Theatre. This required a resident fireman to punch a time clock on the hour, which triggered a confirmatory light on a switchboard at a nearby fire station. If the fireman did not clock in, the alarm was raised and brigades dispatched to the theatre. One night, during a heatwave, no message came through at the designated time, and within minutes, the horse-drawn brigade set off to the frantic clanging of bells. On reaching the theatre, the station fireman could find no sign of fire, but instead found their colleague huddled in a corner and quaking with fear. When he calmed down, he explained that he had decided to open a sliding section of the theatre's roof to allow heat out and some fresh air in. As the panels parted, allowing bright moonlight to flood the auditorium, he was shocked to behold a figure standing like a large statue on centre stage. The tall, well-built man had distinguished features and was dressed in evening clothes, with a long cloak and top hat. According to the witness, a real toff. He described Federici to a T, including the centre parting of his slicked-down hair. However, the distressed fireman explained that the figure was not a real man, not flesh and blood, that he could see through him, like looking through dirty glass, and that his eyes were unforgettable, like cat's eyes and glowing in the moonlight. The ghost had obviously chosen his moment to be seen for maximum effect. Despite reports of such-like terrifying encounters, the Princess Theatre now describes Federici as a benevolent presence and more of a friendly poltergeist. Another vivid sighting of the ghost became widely publicised in 1917. Betty Beddoes was the theatre's wardrobe mistress, who at the time was working around the clock to finish off costumes for an upcoming production of Sheridan's School for Scandal. At 2:30 a.m, the night's fireman knocked on her workroom door and asked her if she would like to see a ghost. Curious but sceptical, she followed him up the side stairs to the dress circle landing, and the astonished pair observed, in profile, the spectre of Federici sitting in the middle of the second row. They watched in awe for a long time, with Betty noticing where his carefully groomed hair was greying and that his immaculate white shirt front glowed in the half-light. In an account that she related for the next 50 years, she also described that the ghost's shirt front studs and jewelled stick pin in the shape of a horseshoe, which secured his cravat, sparkled like stars. The sightings of Federici continued over many decades, with his appearance seen to signify good luck for the coming season. Another fireman, John Gange, spotted him on 2 separate occasions. During one sighting, he thought a well-dressed theatregoer had been locked in, but when he called out to the figure, it didn't answer and started to fade, then disappeared. Some theatre managers have reported his presence. In 1947, Kitty Carroll, wife of the theatre's owner after World War II, said that she had come upon the spectre in a side aisle during a ballet rehearsal. In 1966, the singer June Bronhill spotted a strange pink light, which she wondered may be his faded costume, moving around at the back of the dress circle, but with no one holding it during a performance. In 1996, another owner's wife, Elaine Mariner, said that her visiting friend felt someone brush past her, after which Elaine turned to see a hinged seat that had been raised a moment before turned down. She knew that the seats only stayed down if someone was sitting in them. In all, there have been nearly 30 reports of encounters with the quiet and strangely non-interactive Federici phenomenon. It is as if he is there to observe, but also to be observed. His last known appearance was in a surprising context. In 1972, film producers George Miller and Byron Kennedy, of later Mad Max fame, shot a short documentary film about Federici. At 7:30 one morning, they recreated his funeral in Melbourne General Cemetery with 9 actors playing various roles. One of the film crew snapped 2 still photographs of the scene while the cameras were rolling. While the first shot contained nothing out of the ordinary, the second, taken just seconds later, shows a 10th figure standing amongst the mourners. There was no explanation for the figure, which is not visible even in the outtakes of the moving film. It appeared as a tall, semi-transparent man wearing a monk's black habit and cowl, a costume worn by Mephistopheles as a disguise in the church scene that preceded the final act of Faust.